Okay, thank you. I will call this meeting to order, and as always, recognize the town of Bridgewater is located in Mi'kma'ki, the unceded and ancestral territory of the Mi'kmaq people. It is our privilege to be here. This is our regularly scheduled meeting of Bridgewater Town Council. Obviously, with the storm, we made the call to make it virtual, which was a good call. So I will ask your grace and forgiveness at the beginning. Not my comfort zone running a virtual meeting, so I will do my best, and we'll get through this as best we can. Are there any additions or deletions to the agenda? Hearing none, a motion to approve the agenda is circulated. Councillor Newell, seconded by Councillor Caldwell. All those in favor? Motion is carried. Thank you. Just a reminder, because we are virtual, for members of council, if you wish to speak, or staff when we're diving into business, if you could raise your hands so I can see who wants to speak in what order. Mute your microphones if you are not speaking. And again, another reminder for council, we have to have our cameras on. Are there any announcements from members of council? No? I know that as we get closer to February, I'm sure we'll have some Frost Fair announcements and some Lobster Call announcements and all the other happenings that are taking place. So we'll stay tuned for those. I know we have our delegation here, so we will get right into it. We have representatives from the Bridgewater Food Bank here for a grant request for funding. And just a reminder that council doesn't deliberate the same request the same night that they're received, but it will be on a future agenda. So with that, I think John is here and Kevin, you're here. So I will turn it over to the folks representing the food bank.
Okay, thank you very much. For those who do not know me, my name's John Biddle. I'm one of two coordinators at the food bank. Suzanne Stewart is the other coordinator. My function primarily is to purchase goods. Basically, we're here, as the mayor said, for support by means of a grant of some sort in order to help us continue the operations that we presently do. Now, what's been happening over the last year has been the fact that we've had the perfect storm. We've had such an increase in the price of goods, as you well all know, and the fact that our donations have been down, which is somewhat understandable because people are finding it tight. But we would like to maintain the existing work that we're doing without having to disrupt the amount of food that is going to our clients. Now, one of the things that I wanted to say was, as you all know, we've got the food insecurity, which is, I don't know which is the worst, the problem with housing or, having people in, trying to find shelter or food. But anyway, according to Feed Nova Scotia, 1 in 3 households in Nova Scotia are food insecure, which kind of is a shame. The other thing is the fact, and I think this is really should hit home, Nova Scotia has the highest rate in the country per capita for food insecurity, which doesn't sound very good on our part. Now, part of the problem, of course, is the fact that we are told that the living wage in Bridgewater, or at least the South Shore, should be $26.60 an hour. And I think you will find that there are considerable number of people that do not make that. A lot of them are making minimum wage or just a little bit above it. And all it really takes to put somebody that even making $26.60 an hour, there could be problems that may happen, such as job loss, health issues, whereby they have to go on disability, and short-term disability, long-term disability is certainly not the same amount of money that they would get if they were working. An accident can happen. Relationships can change. So when you get into the situation of food insecurity, I think there's a general consensus by most people that it leads to poor mental and physical health. It causes people to kind of withdraw from, shall we say, the general public, and there's barriers to employment, particularly when they have poor mental or physical health. Now, we are a nonprofit organization. We were established in 1984. And if you go back to 1984, this was a temporary measure. Now, our mandate is to provide support to those in crisis. Now, what we do is we have our clients permitted to come to the food bank once every 2 weeks. And we give them enough food to hold them off for 3 to 5 days. And that's about the extent that we can manage to afford. Now, we're governed also by a volunteer board. Oh, and to let you know, the only person that's paid the food bank is our cleaner. But the volunteer board consists of 8 members. And some of you certainly know Tammy Crowder, who's chair, Sandy Emino, and of course, Kevin Keddy, as you well know, myself, Suzanne Stewart, Linda Rowder, Mel Loveridge, and Claudette Garland. Now, we basically operate with about 45 volunteers. And I've calculated this out a couple of years ago, and we are open roughly 600 hours a year, because we open at 12:15 and we close at 3:15. So that's 3 hours twice a week. And I base it on 50 weeks that were open because of some of the holidays, fall, Christmas, New Year's, and the rest of it. We do give the volunteers an opportunity to have a little bit of a break. But when you consider the fact that we're open 600 hours, there's over 7,000 volunteer hours that are put into the food bank, which I think is quite significant. As I said, one visit every 2 weeks, except for emergency situations, and those will occur. It could occur at any time. It could occur on the days we're not open. People have our phone number to call, and it could be 11 o'clock at night. If somebody is in dire need, we'll go to the food bank and we'll open up and we'll give the people what they need. Food, milk vouchers, bag lunches for school children, and some hygiene products are given out on a regular basis if we have them. And generally, we do have them, maybe except for feminine hygiene. Now, we're called the Bridgewater and Area Interchurch Food Bank for a specific reason. 37% of the clientele that we have live outside of the boundaries of Bridgewater, which leaves 63% in the town of Bridgewater. And we have made a presentation to Modal earlier this month, and we requested some funding from them. And that's why we're here to ask you for some funding. Now, if you take a look, and I don't know if you have the graph in front of you or not, but our client visits, you can see that they're going up. And I want to put something in a little bit of a better perspective. If you were to take, had we have gone back to 2020 to 2024, we had an increase of 193% in people visiting the food bank. Now, as I said before, with the perfect storm that's hit us, as you can see that our surplus or deficit, we did have a surplus in 2023 and 2024, and we certainly lost more than that up to the end of November. We went down by $80,000. So our expenses are high. Food bank donations were down. Individuals, Food Bank Canada was down, Feed Nova Scotia was down, Interchurch was pretty well level, and grants were a little bit down. Now, the cost of goods, the biggest expense we had in the cost of goods, basically was due to the increase that we saw from, it doesn't matter what grocery store you're at. It really makes a big difference when you see some of the prices of goods. Example, peanut butter. You can go into a grocery store right now. It's $5 for 1 kg of peanut butter. Year and a half ago, 2 years ago, it was $5, and you could get it on sale for $4.50 if a deal came up. Now, obviously, our food insecurity and the needs of our residents exceed our revenue. 2025 deficit is projected to be down, I think it was $80,000. The deficit will be funded by the use of the funds the food bank has been saving. We've been very, very fortunate up until this past year to be able to build up a good bank account, if you will, for the purposes of being able to supply people with their needs. So when you get a hit of $80,000, it certainly hurts. Now, some of the things that we have a bit of a problem with are insufficient storage space. When we take a look at a deal that comes online, it would be nice to be able to get a pallet load of this or a pallet load of that. We cannot do it because we just do not have the room. We did an expansion back in, I think it was 2018, and you graciously gave us 550 square feet that we could expand. We made another proposal recently for if we could do another expansion, and we were given 193 square meters. So there was a significant difference. The unfortunate part is it creates a significant cost in us transferring from what we exist right now in having for what we need to go from 550 square feet, which was given to us in 18, to the 193 square meters that you've said that we could expand. So that makes it somewhat difficult for us to be able to get, your pallet loads of this or pallet loads of that come when we, when we have a real good deal. And sometimes we do end up getting good deals. There's no question. But that's when we'd like to take the big total advantage of that. But the point is, we don't have the room to do it. But what we're trying to do right now, is feed the people, everybody that comes to the food bank. We're looking at families and individuals that go hungry and are forced to make some tough decisions. A lot of them, I know that we do have a breakfast program at the schools. But again, same old story. That's 5 days a week. That doesn't help out on your Saturdays and Sundays. So as I'm in front of you asking if you as town council can consider donate, I shouldn't say donate, giving us an amount of $40,000 less the property tax exemption, which we're glad to have, which is about $7,200. So that basically is my spiel. And fortunately for, I think, most of the people in town council, you're not in a position to have to worry about what your next meal comes from, or where it comes from. And how am I going to pay for my heat? How am I going to pay for my light? And obviously, how am I going to pay for my food? So I'm asking that if you're kind enough to give us what we're asking for, it would be greatly appreciated. And if for some reason or other you got all kinds of extra money, we'd like to have some of that too. So anyway, I'm going to leave that where I'm at. You can ask any questions that you'd like, and let's go from there.
Wonderful. Thank you, John. Really appreciate your presentation. Are there any questions from members of council? This is on our agenda later too. It would generally be referred to our budget deliberations, which we'll be starting soon. But
okay.
Councillor Newell, you have your hand up.
Wonderful. I really appreciate it. I can only imagine all the hard work that goes into this. So really huge thanks to you and your volunteers. Can you tell me specifically, is the intention of this money to buy food, or is it to support your expansion, to allow you to improve future operations? What's exactly the purpose of this money? And then your worship, I have additional questions, if that's all right.
If we were going to expand, this would be a drop in the bucket. But for us to expand right now, I would have to hazard to guess that it would cost anywhere between $250,000 to $500,000. The reason I say that is because it cost us about $150,000 for the 550 square feet that we ended up spending for our expansion of 550 square feet back in, I think it was 2018. So And we would have to, there's so many different things that would have to change, that is going to cost us more money. So at this stage, I think I'll go a step at a time and just ask for help in regards to food, rather than help or ask for help in building. But that may come, and I'm not shocked.
Councillor Neal, you had additional questions?
Yeah. If I may, what was your ask to modal?
20.
20. Okay, that makes sense. Wonderful. Okay, thank you.
Welcome.
Thank you.
Thank
Other
you.
questions from council? Deputy Mayor?
I was just wondering, I know that this was a perfect storm, but I unfortunately don't anticipate it being a short storm. Is there a plan for the future? Is it coming to council and looking for these grants? Is it kind of a short-term plan so that you can to kind of bide you time to figure out what to do going forward, or exploring other options?
Well, obviously, we're going to have to explore other options. There's no question. Looking for more grants. I'm sure we will always be looking for grants. Again, the situation is such that I cannot see in the near future anything changing. I don't know if I mentioned, but from 2020 to 2024, we had an increase in the number of people coming to the food bank of 193%. And it's increasing. I shouldn't say it's increasing. I will say that between 2024 and 2025, it's primarily stayed steady. But, our situation is such that our clients are permitted to come to the food bank once every 2 weeks. And when we can only give them enough food to satisfy them for maybe 3 to 5 days, you can well imagine what the problem is. With what are they going to do the next, 10, 11 days.
So as part of our process that we've been going through, we've been doing a strategic plan and coming up with our strategic priorities for the future. And one of the things we've just recently established is a fundraising committee as a separate committee. And this committee will be looking at other means of fundraising. So I'm actually quite excited and hoping that see some changes in the future that will reinvigorate some of our funding and enable us to raise some on our own as well. Now, that committee has not been quite established. We're still working on membership. Next month, we're going to start looking for volunteers that might want to sit on that committee. And so that's one of our ways. And as I said, annually, we will be doing strategic initiatives and see where we can go to address some of these concerns, because there is a concern with regards to the current structure and its size, but right now our donations are very cyclical. We get a bulk amount in December, and then not everybody remembers us in the summer, because the summer where everybody's growing food. But unfortunately, our clientele is slowly changing from a large senior population to a more family size membership that are using our services, which means we're redirecting our purchasing. And this is new since COVID. And so we're doing more milk and protein products, more stable products, whereas before we were serving a more senior population. I'm not saying that they've gone away. I'm just saying, we went from some 600 people a month to over 1,000, and that's a big jump. Sorry, John,
Yeah.
I didn't mean
No, that's
interrupt.
fine. Hey, Kevin, hey, say it the way it is, and that's exactly the way it is. So,
Any
you
other
know-
questions from council?
The-
Oh, John, did you have something else to add?
I was just going to say that, whatever it was. No, I can't think of anything right now, other than the fact that, we're looking at possibly doing the typical fundraiser, which is a golf tournament. That's in the back of my mind anyway. But, I think, to be very, very honest with you, the biggest thing that we have to do is feed the people that are in need. And if we possibly can, find ways and means of increasing the amount of money that we could end up doing an expansion. And that expansion is going to cost us a fair chunk of dollars. Now, I will admit, the first expansion that we did, it ended up being very, very successful. We had a lot of companies in the community. Some of them gave service free of charge. Others gave services at a certainly significant reduced rate. So as I say, as far as I'm concerned, we've got to keep a close watch on this, because people, let's face facts. I think we all know, if particularly when it comes to the young people, if they do not have a good diet, then they find it very, very difficult at school. And I think, as I say, I'm only talking about the young people, and the parents, I'm sure, feel that they're somewhat helpless in a lot of ways. So what we'll do is we'll keep plugging away. You might even hear from me again. And wouldn't you be lucky? So, anyway, but look, I really want to thank you very much for listening to me. I know I can ramble now and again, but I think this is a very important area. I know that we talk about food insecurity. We know about the situation when it comes to housing for people, the costs there. So, it's a tough road, for you people on council. And, I'm glad I'm not in your shoes. All you need to do is, go to your nearest bank and ask them for a real cheap loan type of thing. Hi, Mike.
Thank you, John, for that.
Okay.
If there's no other questions from council, like I said, this will be referred to budget deliberations, and then if we have questions between now and then, we know where to find you. We definitely know where to find Kevin.
Yes.
So we will reach out if we have any more questions.
Okay, fine. Thank you very much
Thank
for
you
your
both.
time.
Thank you.
Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Okay, bye-bye now.
Before we move into our first item, which is our presentation, are there any other members of the public that wish to address council on any matters? This is the time. Seeing none, I know that we have our representatives from PVSC here to give a presentation on the 2026 assessment roll. So I will turn that over to Paul. I think you're on my second screen. I don't know where you are.
I'm here somewhere. Thank you, Your Worship and Council. Pleasure to be here tonight. I would have preferred to be there in person, but this is Nova Scotia weather. So I'm here. Well, I'm the Municipal Account Manager for PVSC, and I work with all the municipalities. And I have Rod Tremblay here, who is the Appeals and Special Projects Director for PVSC. Excuse me. But in the essence of time, I'm just going to jump right into it. The first few slides will be a bit of a refresher for some of you. I know some of you are probably new to our presentation, so I will go through it fast. If you have any questions, you can always reach out to us, so on and so forth. I think you know the drill. So go ahead, Rod, and we'll get her going. I guess I
Thanks.
wanted to say this to start. I think Rod's got control there, I believe. Yes. So I want to start. You've probably read or heard some of the headlines lately because we just released the roll a short while ago. Basically, it said that assessments surpassed the 200 billion mark across Nova Scotia, which is the highest they've ever been. But some of the reports indicated that it was driven by HRM. Well, to a certain degree, it was. I guess on the commercial side, they've kind of been the engine on the as far as the commercial assessment for several years. But on the residential side, it's a different story. Outside of HRM was the engine this time, CBRM, and all around the province, like Southwest Nova exceeded the residential lift as compared to HRM. For Southwest Nova, it was about 9.4% versus HRM 7.6%. So the ripples that have been created by affordable housing, people looking for affordable housing, and the sort of the post-pandemic effect seems to have moved outwards around the province, and there seems to be more growth there. So we're legislated under the Nova Scotia Assessment Act. Those are the rules and regulations we essentially go by. We deliver the assessment roll to all 49 municipalities. This year, we sent out over 650,000 assessments just a couple of weeks ago to residents of Nova Scotia. We're municipally funded, we're a not-for-profit, and we have a board of directors. Deputy Mayor Joe Feeney is still our chair from Mahone Bay, and we have about 135 employees. We serve the entire province, and they live and work in 60 communities around the province. Go ahead there, Rod. What we do and what we don't do, very quickly, we deliver the assessment roll. That's our prime function. We also administer the capped assessment program. The legislation is provincial. We administer it, as well as the tourist business designation program, the seasonal tourist business designation program. What we don't do is we don't have the authority to determine land ownership or the specifics of land. That's the land registry. We don't set taxes, collect taxes, create tax policy, or provide tax relief. That's all within the municipalities and the provincial government's function, more specifically under the MGA. All right, Rod? So I guess one of the key points I'd like to make is that we assess at market value, which is basically the value that a person would pay in the open market, willing buyer, willing seller. However, we have a prescribed date, which is our base date in that blue box, which is January 1st, 2025. That's our market valuation date. So we're retrospective or retroactive 1 year on our market values, which means that we look at sales and market value sales right up to that January 1st, 2025 date. And based on our analysis, what determines which way the markets are moving for our 2026 assessments. So we look 1 year back. We're looking at real market data. We're not speculating. We're not projecting or anything. We're looking at what has actually occurred. And I'm not going to go into the state date to any great degree other than to say that we collect data right up until the roll goes out. So market value a year back, continue to collect data right up until the roll goes out. So we use mass appraisal to determine the value of the property in Nova Scotia. It's the process of valuing a group of properties as of a given date, which is that base date a year ago. We use common data, standardized methods, and statistical testing. So we look at geographic areas, groups of homogeneous property transactions, similar type of properties to determine which way the market is moving. Go ahead, Rod. We'll go to the next one. I want to get to Rod and some of the numbers as quickly as possible, and I know you've got a busy agenda. So we use 3 approaches to determining those values. The sales comparison approach is by far the most common and most widely utilized around the world for doing mass appraisal and residential appraisals. So basically, we're looking at sales. If similar properties have sold, that would be a sort of a proxy for similar properties that haven't sold. The income approach is for those properties that their value is derived or determined, or they transact based on the cash flow or the income they can generate. Things such as strip malls, hotels, motels, apartment buildings, office spaces, things such as that are determined using the income approach. That's how they transact, based on the income. And the cost method, typically for us, the cost method is for the more unique properties that don't have a whole lot of sales, industrial warehousing, fisheries, plants and assets, things like that, which is a little harder to use a sales comparative approach for. All right, Rod, next one. And as I say, sales data is very important to us. We're about 40,000, 35 to 40,000 sales across the province in Nova Scotia the last few years. We look at them all to determine which ones meet that criteria for a market value arm's length sale. And to do that, we look at real estate listings, we talk to property owners, we look for whatever information we get, it can have aerial pictometry, we do inspections, and so on. So only those sales that meet the criteria of a market sale are used in our analysis, and we use those sales to determine, as I say, the direction in which the market is moving for our assessments. We reassess every year. We use those sales in order to determine that. Next one, Rod. And of course, the one that we get the most questions on is the capped assessment program. And the province introduced it in around 2005, but really it really took effect for most property owners around 2007, when each property that was eligible was automatically included in the cap. Originally, you had to apply for it. Now you don't. If you're eligible and you meet the criteria, you're automatically in the cap program. It's based on the Consumer Price Index of Nova Scotia. That's how much the value of the property, if there's no other changes whatsoever, the value of the property will be capped at that CPI each year. So in 2026, in the green bubble there, the cap rate was 2.6%. Now, if you look at the cap rate or historic cap rates just below there, they ranged anywhere from 0.3 pre-pandemic to 7.7 in the middle of the pandemic when we had the high inflation. And now we're kind of returning back to the norm, 1.5 in 2025, 2.6 this year. So I won't get into the chart at the bottom other than to say this is what you would typically see on a basic residential assessment notice. It would show the assessed value, which is the market value, which in this case is quite a lot higher than the cap calculated value, almost double in this case. So under the rules of the cap, the lower of the two is what the municipality is able to tax the property owner on. So in this case, the taxable value would be 114,000 versus the market value of 226,000. So you can glean from this that this property would have been in the cap for quite some time and gained quite a bit of benefit from that over time, the differential between CPI and market increases. I'm going to toss it over to Rod here now. He's going to walk through some of the numbers for you.
So good evening, everyone. Paul, just confirming everyone, you're able to hear me okay. I just can't see the screen as I have the presentation up. Thanks. So good evening, Your Worship, Mayor Mitchell, councillors, and municipal staff. Thanks for taking some time out of your busy schedule to listen to us this evening. I'll try and keep it as brief as possible to save some time for questions. As Paul mentioned, I'm Rod Tremblay, Director, Residential Appeals and Special Projects with PVSC. And I'm going to take you through a couple of slides with some numbers around assessment changes year over year. And I have some notes here where I'll provide a little bit of extra context around sort of what these numbers mean from a taxation and budgetary perspective as well. So I'm going to go ahead to the next slide. So this slide reads sort of historically with the previous 4 years on the right side, and sort of the current 2026 assessment roll, which we're talking about tonight, on the left side of the slide. Something I wanted to outline here that we've presented in a couple of other municipal presentations as well that's very interesting. It's just the amount of assessment growth that has happened over the past 4 or 5 years as a result of the COVID-19 pandemic and some of the market increases that we've seen as a result of that, as well as changes to construction costs and many other factors, as Paul mentioned. But what it means for the town of Bridgewater specifically is in 2022, there was an assessment roll that was, significantly below $1 billion. And we're now well on the way to the $2 billion mark at more than $1.5 billion for 2026. So it represents around a 65% increase just over the past 4 years, which really is remarkable considering, historical assessment increases and flatter markets that we've seen in the past, especially in Nova Scotia outside of HRM. And as Paul mentioned, we've continued to see a very active market, both in the residential market as well as in the market for some multifamily as well. So just some really interesting numbers. So the total assessment roll, again, $1.54 billion for 2026. That's an increase of 9.3% over the last year. When compared to the province, as Paul mentioned, it actually outstrips the province a little bit. The province was about 8.3 year over year, so reflecting some of that increased growth that we've seen outside of HRM. Total residential roll was the vast majority of the roll, as we can see on this slide. So over $1 billion of that total assessment roll is residential, and the residential assessment lift year over year was 9.9%. Again, that outstripped the province a little bit. Total residential in the province was 8.5%. So sort of leading the way there and seeing some of that strong sales growth continuing into 2026 based on the market at the beginning of 2025, as Paul has mentioned. The third number, adjusted total residential with cap applied. This is a really important number, especially for members of council as you go through your budgetary considerations over the next couple of months here. This is the amount of residential tax dollars sort of available to levy taxes. So this ties directly into Paul's previous slide around the capped assessment program and the taxable assessment being the lower of the two on cap eligible properties, which is the majority of residential property in the town of Bridgewater. So that number is $843 million, which represents an 8.1% lift over last year, and a little bit higher than the province again, which was 7.52. Total commercial in the town of Bridgewater, $410,897,000. And there has been a small lift to commercial taxable, 2.6% overall, which was a little bit less than the provincial average. Although I would mention that the provincial average, there was quite a bit of impact from HRM in that average, where we saw some really significant land value changes in a couple of the business parks that moved commercial up. And a significant portion of the town of Bridgewater's commercial is also exempt. So Michelin is by far and away the largest taxable commercial account, as I'm sure everyone is aware. So I'll move on to the next slide. And just a couple of other notes that I wanted to mention before I move on, actually. We've often had questions in previous council presentations around these assessment lifts and what they mean for market growth versus new growth. So when I say new growth, we're talking about construction, so bricks and sticks that have been added to the assessment roll up to that December 1st cutoff date, the state date, as Paul mentions, and what sort of percentage that has added versus market growth. And so when we look at that total assessment lift that I mentioned of 9.3%, what we're seeing is that the market growth represents a portion about 8.5%, this is the residential growth. So 9.9% in total, 8.5% is residential market growth, and 1.4% is new growth. So that would be value added through the building permit process and actually adding sort of physical data to the assessment roll. So the next slide talks a little bit about sales that are used for our reassessment analysis. So shows that, we've continue to see a relatively active market right into the end of 2024. So sales used for the 2026 assessment roll on the right side of this slide. So we have seen some fluctuation, and we can see that very active COVID market back in 2023, 288 sales, but we still continue to see 230 sales within the town of Bridgewater, but I would say indicates, quite an active market continuing into this year's reassessment. This slide just gives a little bit of information on building permits. So we receive permits from the town of Bridgewater and review them to determine if an inspection is required or if there's a value change to that property attributable to physical changes. And what we see again is that it's been relatively steady over the past couple of years. There was a few more. What's interesting about these permits as well is often it can take a couple of years for a permit to be sort of fully assessed on an assessment roll, especially with larger projects. So although this number gives us a really good indication of sort of trending over time, it also could be that in some years the permit value may exceed the same permit value on a larger number of permits, because this is sort of more of a total number, if you will. So appeals as well. So I've got a little bit more context to add to this slide, but we had 92 appeals in 2025. Of those appeals, we have 58% of them were confirmed or withdrawn. So we either felt that the value was okay, or after a conversation with our staff, the appellant decided to withdraw the appeal, or sort of was in agreement about the changes. Sometimes it's just a simple explanation. We adjusted 26% of appeals, and the remainder remain outstanding. A good segue into the appeal process. So we are currently in the appeal period for the 2026 assessment roll. Property owners have 31 days to appeal annually. I think the best thing that folks can do if they have questions regarding their assessment is to give us a call, and I'll cover our contact information on the next page. This is another slide using the same numbers as Paul's cap slide around the 2026 assessment and assessed value. What's important here is what's highlighted in orange is what is under appeal. So in this scenario, this is really, really important for any folks on the call here who would be talking to constituents around assessments and sort of what's under appeal when an appeal is filed. And in this situation, the assessed value is dramatically higher than the capped assessment value, which is a situation that we often see when properties have been in the cap since 2005 or 2007, when it became automatic. And so in this scenario, we don't have any more information about this hypothetical property, but if this property owner were to appeal and be reduced, so if PVSC agreed that the 226,000 was high, and we recommended a reduction, say by 10% to a number closer to 200,000, it wouldn't have any impact on taxation for that property owner, because the capped assessment remains the lower of the two numbers. There's only a taxation impact when the number here on the left, 226,800, drops below the capped assessment. So I would suggest that unless there was a significant physical data issue with this property, which would be rare, such as extensive fire damage, flood damage, property has been demolished and PVSC was unaware, there typically wouldn't be a reduction large enough to impact the taxes in this scenario. Again, we really just encourage the folks to give us a call. Should a property owner disagree with their assessed value, you're all able to file an appeal by February 12th of 2026. All of the instructions are on the second back page of the assessment notice this year. And there are 3 levels of appeal. So the first is the PVSC initial assessor review, which often results in a conversation with an assessor whereby property owner and assessor can sort of come to an agreement. If that's not the case, there's opportunity to continue an appeal to the Nova Scotia Assessment Appeal Tribunal, which is a third party separate from PVSC. And there's 14 days to do that once a notice is received of confirmation. The third level of appeal is the Nova Scotia Regulatory and Appeals Board. And this is sort of the highest level of sort of administrative appeal in Nova Scotia, and represents a more formalized process, again, stemming from the results of the Assessment Appeal Tribunal. So our contact information, in the bubble here, we mentioned during last year's appeal period, we responded to over 10,000 inquiries by phone and email, and our average wait time was 16 seconds. So we have nearly every assessor who is working within PBSC available on the phones for what we call the inquiry period. So that 31-day period where folks can appeal. And that's to be able to sort of prospectively resolve any questions and just discuss assessments with property owners and be able to build an understanding of why there might be changes year over year. And often we answer a lot of questions around the capped assessment program and eligibility as well, which we're happy to do. So our knowledgeable and expert staff are ready to assist. And if you receive any questions from constituents about property assessment, have them give us a call to our contact center, and the information is below or on our great website at pbsc.ca. So thanks very much for your time again. I'm going to stop sharing so I can go back to the video call, but appreciate the time.
Thank you, Ron. Thank you, Paul, for that. I'll spare you my long rant about the cap because I know it's not your it's not your thing. I know that multiple municipalities are going to have a conversation about this because we have to. When I look at your slides, 75% of properties are capped, which means that you have a disproportionate number of people carrying the tax burden for the larger group. So what that looks like going forward to make it so you're not removing the cap and punishing people, there's got to be a way.
Your worship, that's been a discussion, as you know, for many years.
Yeah, I think it's coming to a head though. So
I'll leave it to you. I'll leave it to you.
Thank you. I don't know if members of council have any questions. Maybe just I have a quick one. So if a property is sold, depends, I guess, on the time of year that it's sold, the assessment and its new cap should be close or should match, correct?
I'll let Rod go and give you the answer to that one.
Yeah, so I think you're correct around the timing is mainly related to the fact that if you purchase a property this time of year, you're very likely paying, so through the closing procedure, you would pay out the existing taxes owing. So like it has a little bit to do with the municipal billing cycle and whether the new taxes have been billed yet. But for instance, if a property transacts today, it's an interesting time of year in the winter because we have a new assessment roll, but we don't yet have a new municipal taxation year until April 1st. So that property remains assessed to the previous owner until next year, next January. So the ownership and that assessment notice would have been mailed to the previous owner who was the owner at the time that we mailed the notices. So that new owner would, in that example, benefit from the previous owner's cap for that year due to the timing. So, and the reverse would exist if a property transacted in December. So it depends a little bit on the timing in the year. And I think that's what you mean around the difference in the timing. So the adjustment and how that adjustment is calculated when a sale transacts depends a little bit on how much of the municipal fiscal year is remaining or how much of that billing period is remaining at the time of purchase. When a property transacts, if it's an open market transaction, so not direct family member as prescribed in the cap legislation, and we review for those, of course. Typically the cap is removed from that property. The new owner will be eligible in the year following purchase. They're not eligible for the capped assessment program. And what that does is form sort of a basis for the future capped assessment. So should they meet all the requirements in the year following that. So in the scenario of a sale that transacted today, they would not be eligible in 2027 next year, but they would be eligible in 2028. And what that allows us to do is make sure that the data on the account is correct and make sure that the assessment is reflecting what transacted at the time of sale. And then that eligibility, as Paul mentioned, is generally automatic in a typical situation whereby if the requirements are met, our system will determine that eligibility and allow a cap to calculate in future years. So if the market lift exceeds the consumer price index, typically there would be a cap on that property if there's no other physical changes requiring an adjustment. Typically in years following a purchase, there can be sometimes not a lot of advantage in the cap in the first couple of years, and that grows over time, and you eventually sort of may reach a point where there's a significant difference between your cap assessment and your market assessment. Does that answer your question?
Yep. That's great. No, that helps me. Thank you.
I was just gonna add that the new cap or even the new assessed value may or may not reflect the sale price, in that quite often it's a very good indication of what the market value is. However, as you can appreciate, during the COVID period, there were bidding wars and so on and so forth, which there were many that sold higher than what we would have put down as the market value, just because of the undue influence or the sort of the pressure that was on people to find a house. So, but typically it's a fairly
Yeah,
good
that's a great point. I
approximation.
think I sort of categorize that around sales investigation and the process that we do internally to allow us to determine, any distance between assessments and sales and how that might affect a future reassessment or how we move values en masse for a population of dwellings, is that we sort of correct that data. And often if there's a significant discrepancy between sale price and assessed value at the time of sale, it's often the case that upon investigation, there are items that are sort of corrected on the assessment that the PVSC may not have been aware of that bring that assessment a little bit closer to the sale price. But I often, when speaking with property owners and appellants, it's literally impossible for us to go in and just take the sale price and make it the assessment. Although, as Paul mentions, it is a very good indication and something that provides, a sort of a sum of all parts or a tool for us to determine that value.
Thank you. Mark.
Just really quickly, just for your information, I had asked Paul previously before this presentation about how many properties in the town of Bridgewater had not received a tax assessment increase within the last 5 years. And he told me that there was none. So the reason I asked that question is because it's an indicator of the fairness of people relative in the town. They're all getting a tax assessment increase, which means that everybody is making some degree of increased contribution to overall tax revenue. So I know that's not the case in many other municipalities, but here in Bridgewater, that to me was a good report.
I couldn't find any, at least. Yeah.
Oh, well, that's different than none, but I'll,
Don't go looking.
I searched the database and I didn't see any pop up.
okay.
Thank you. Are there any other questions from council? Well, Rod and Paul, thank you again for your time. I'm sure we'll be seeing you soon as you make your rounds, but appreciate you giving your presentation tonight.
You're very welcome. Pleasure to be here,
Right.
even if it's virtual. Thanks.
Thanks. Take
Thanks
care.
for having
Okay.
us, and thanks for the opportunity to chat. Take care.
Yeah.
Thanks. We have the minutes of December 8th, regular meeting and public hearing. Any errors or omissions with those? Hearing none, can I have a motion to approve the minutes as circulated, please? Councillor Wynot, seconded by Deputy Mayor McDonald. All those in favor? Those opposed? Minutes are carried. We have correspondence for information. This is just a copy of a letter sent to the Premier from the town of Antigonish regarding declining cellular service. So obviously we also have the same issue. Some spots in town and definitely in a circle 5 minutes out of town. So a big problem. We actually discussed it at our REMO meeting this morning, and talking about it's great if you activate a REMO. It's if you can coordinate emergency services, but not if you can't reach people, or if you send an emergency alert and they don't get the alert. So all these things that we require cellular service. So that letter is there for your information. We are now down to business arising and unfinished business. So 2026-27 capital budget. So we have our Director of Finance and staff here. I know some questions were sent to staff. So we'll kind of go through those. And this is the capital budget portion of our budget deliberations, but we're not approving the capital budget. There is still time to discuss it, but our Director of Finance is looking for a little bit of guidance in terms of anything that council wants to move around. So Kim, I'll turn it over to you.
Okay, perfect. Hopefully you can see my screen.
Yep.
The presentation hasn't changed from the January 12th meeting, so I'll just go through it quickly just to get everybody back on track and thinking about some of the things that were presented. Maybe computer would like to cooperate. There we go. So these were the last updates. So there haven't been any updates to the capital budget document itself either that was shared with you all. So the last time the big changes were adding the fire truck for $3 million to 2032-33, the Public Works garage roof replacement, the King Street court gazebo roof, and the wastewater treatment plant moving around the RBC shaft replacement from the previous schedule with a slight increase. So again, just reminding you that we have various funding sources for this budget. And for the 26-27 year, there's funds from capital from operating, gas tax, grants, debt, and reserves. The debt service ratio is still looking quite low at 6.45%, but keeping in mind that that's because for both carry forward and 26-27, the debt repayments for those projects are not projected out to start until the following year. And that's when you'll see the debt service ratio start increasing. Also, I believe there was one question that was submitted by email about gas tax funding. I'm wondering what that was. We still call it gas tax here in finance sometimes, but it is CCBF, Canada Communities Building Fund, and that's federal funding that comes by agreement with the province and the feds and the town of Bridgewater, and that's an annual amount we receive, and it's about $725,000 per year, sometimes a little higher. We receive it in 2 payments broken up over the fiscal year. Once we've filed all the necessary reporting, of course. So if you don't send in your reporting, you don't get your funds. So you'll see that the amount for 26-27 is higher than the 725. And the reason for that is that we just have some unspent. Sometimes what happens is we plan to use gas tax money. If we end up getting another grant that can't stack gas tax, or the project was delayed, deferred, came in under budget, what have you, sometimes we don't use it. So the gas tax reserve has built up a little bit. So I just budgeted for 26-27 to use up the surplus in the gas tax reserve. So hopefully that's helpful for everyone. And I apologize for using old language, but it
okay.
usually
I
rings
still
true
do.
for most of us that have been around for a while in the municipal world. Gas tax, if I put CCBF, no one would know what I was talking about.
No, I still call it gas tax too.
Yeah, old habits. And then there was just a separate breakdown which showed investment by category so that you can see primarily where the largest parts of the capital budget are being spent. 22.5 on transportation, keeping in mind this includes streets, sidewalks, intersection improvements, and things like that, not just equipment. Wastewater is at 81.3 million and the wastewater treatment plant at 56.2 million. So those are the standouts. The business park you'll see there as well. And so those are the categories that we use in the public document that you have, but just summarized by year and by type, just to give you a little bit of a different view. Again, we've talked about last time that the debt service ratio is projected to increase, and by 31-32, we're at 33.6%. Based on the current budget, and also assuming every project that's debt financed is starts repayment in the year following the project start. So this is a worst case scenario, remembering for multi-year projects, if the project takes 3 years to complete, obviously we wouldn't be financing it likely till the end of the project. The only exception we've had to that is Exit 12A, where we did fund some of the larger payments earlier on in the project, so we didn't have cash flow issues. As we tend to fund most of our capital projects temporarily with our own cash and reserves. Also mentioning for anyone, especially the public that weren't watching last time, the capital budget document is color coded. Anything that's green is funded by our DMAF funding agreement, and those projects must continue as they are committed to with the federal and provincial funding we've received. Items in purple are things that have been identified by staff as either being at council's discretion, it may not be mandatory, that are optional choices. The white projects are generally considered necessary, but certainly up for discussion. Again, these were just some highlights from the budget. We've talked about them twice already, so I won't go through that again tonight. I did give a bit of a scope for you to kind of look at what cutting 3 million per year from the 10-year capital budget would do to affect the debt service ratio, as well as if we received any grant funding related to the wastewater treatment plant expansion. And then what would the debt service ratio look like if we received funding for the wastewater treatment plant, as well as 3 million of cuts per year. 3 million cuts per year is difficult to achieve, but I just wanted you to see how we could get the debt service ratio under 20%, which is a very fair given the amount of capital work we're doing. And so at this point in time, this is just some hypotheticals. The funding for the wastewater treatment plant expansion, the fund we're hoping to apply for hasn't even come out yet. So we haven't seen the application. We're expecting it sometime this fall. So there's definitely no certainty around that. That is not a given. There will be funding being released that would be a 73% federal provincial contribution, with the rest being funded by the municipality. But there's certainly been no even application yet at this time. It's just to give you an idea of what would have to go well to get us down from that 33.6 debt service ratio in 31-32. Yes, so that is all that I wanted to talk about up front, just to kind of refresh everybody on why we need to have this perhaps difficult conversation about what things may need to come out of the capital budget in order to make it affordable. Most certainly 26-27 is the focus, but as you can see, it's really going to take some cuts from all years to get our debt service ratio below that 30% threshold. And 30% is our understanding of what the province's cutoff would be in approving debt for us. So yeah, that's the highlights, and certainly we can dive right into any questions people have about the capital budget itself. The Director of Engineering is here, as well as Director of Community Development. So hopefully we can answer all your questions.
Perfect, thank you. I know there are some questions, and I think some of you sent some suggestions for cuts that I'm sure Council would like to talk about. So Councillor Newell, yeah, what have you got?
Let's start. I got a lot. But let's start with Kim. What is the funding? What is the program we're hoping for the wastewater treatment plant? And do you have any expectation on when that application period will open?
Right. The only time it's been brought up to me is on a call with some provincial government employees while we were talking about impacts of Exit 12A and some things like that. So it was a meeting about something else. And so we said, oh, by the way, we have this coming up. And they've indicated that this funding application should be out in the spring. So we're still quite a ways away even from the application coming out. We presume we'll have a fair amount of time to get our application together, as it would be pretty significant. As you can see right now, just the estimate for the expansion is $50 million. I know that the Director of Engineering is working on getting a tender document together to get some preliminary work done on that, because of course it's just an estimate. We don't have drawings or anything even to get very precise costing on it this time. So
it's not formally public yet. This is just something that's mostly come up in conversations.
That's correct. I mean, the federal government does have some information out on it, but there's no application at this time.
Okay. But do you remember what it's called?
Yep, it's called CHIF.
CHIF.
CHIF, I think. Canadian
Curious.
Housing Infrastructure.
It's like,
Something
isn't
or
that the
other. Sorry, I
reverse home
hate
mortgage?
to.
We're gonna take a reverse home mortgage on the wastewater treatment plant.
I mean, if we need to, I guess it's an option.
Well, we're gonna have to do something because I'm
Um,
not going to debt that high.
Moving over to the BMA parking lot, I was curious that if we delay or postpone the paving for that parking lot, if we open ourselves up to any additional liability, and as that parking lot naturally continues to deteriorate.
So just before we go, staff can't
Oh.
answer legal questions. So the question is probably better, are there any areas of concern that require immediate attention would probably be the better question. I just don't want, I don't
Sure,
want
I'll
staff
take
to have
it.
to answer a legal question without a law
I
degree.
appreciate that.
There certainly the parking lot is aging. We do know that there was a plan to replace it in its entirety. But if there is a pothole there, staff will fix it. So I think you've already seen a little bit more work prior to the asphalt plant closing. We made a couple small patches prior to the plant closing. So we can push it out and just do some local patching if need be.
You got some more there, Councillor Newell? You're on a roll.
I do, but I also don't want to dominate if there are other questions. So if you want to ping pong around, I won't be upset. But well, I have it. Sorry, can somebody just tell me more about the essentialness of the Lehigh Fire Access Road? I know this has been brought up a few times, and I know this is a request from the fire department. So I'm just curious on where that desire comes from.
So I did ask the fire chief the same question.
Oh, excellent.
Yeah, because I had the same question. So the access road would be down like closer to the foot of Logan Road. And so the need there is if there was ever a fire or a need to draw water from the river because there's whatever huge fire or lack of water available at the business park, it would allow them to access that much closer to like an industrial fire that was happening in that area where currently they can't get water close enough.
Okay, great to know. Okay, thank
It's
you.
a hope they never have to use it access road. That's how he named it to me. So, Deputy Mayor McDonald.
I was just going to piggyback on the BMA parking lot. You've got annual amounts in there, I guess, kind of picking away at the project. Could those be reduced and kept in a reserve to kind of build up to do a larger amount? So it's not just bits and pieces at a time? Is there any logic or to that, or does it make absolutely no sense to do that? Kind of save to do the bigger job.
Yeah, I have to look and see how we're funding that. Sorry.
Oh, right. I didn't consider that.
Yeah, so if we're not using operating funds to fund it, and we were
Right.
going to say borrow for that, which we are in 26, 27, we can't actually borrow for something we haven't spent. So it's not like we're just putting capital from operating, that we could just still use that and put it in reserve, unfortunately.
Great. Yeah, I didn't consider the source of funding. Thank you.
So we would just borrow less. So if we reduce that number from 100,000 to 25,000, then we would borrow $75,000 less. Right?
Yes. Yes.
Okay. Thank you. Other questions? Councillor Newell.
For the, I think it's 2.66 million in non-DMAF wastewater projects for this year, I think. Yeah. What's the essentialness of those? And I don't mean to ask that as in, I guess, like, to me, I interpret, even though it's not a DMAF, I'm kind of looking at this, given our current state with wastewater, that anything labeled as wastewater is, I interpret, as probably going to be essential. But given that we're trying to remove 3 million from our budget, I guess I'm just trying to gauge of like what is labeled wastewater as a white line item, if anything, that is not necessarily an essential upgrade.
I'm not sure if Matt wants to answer that, but there's quite a few projects kind of within that category. Being the wastewater collection on Jubilee Road, Pump Station 7 force main renewal. I think you're probably looking at corrugated culvert replacement program, Looks like probably some storm sewer on Albert Street and a project on Elm Street as well. Those the projects that you were referring to?
Yeah, that's correct. That's correct. All the non-DMAF wastewater projects, I think, outside of the treatment plant.
Okay.
Wastewater and wastewater treatment plant. The non-DMAF projects, I think, equates to about $2 million. So I'm just trying to gauge if any of those white line items are not essential. Yeah.
So I wasn't sure which projects specifically were referenced in the $2.6 million question. But with respect to Jubilee, I will bring council's attention to the commitment to the development on Jubilee, as well as potential partnership with Modal. That's what it reflects. Pumping Station 7, we've had a number of force main breaks where that relates to overflows, or in this case, sanitary overflows, which we are trying to limit or eliminate completely because they are reporting to Department of Environment on those. And I think you said Elm Street. So I think I talked about that one before. We seem to have a section of public sewer running through private property to eliminate. So while we did deal with that temporarily, that fix could last for a few years, but it is something we should be looking to eliminate when they present themselves. I'm not sure the corrugated metal culvert. We do find through our pavement management projects that we have some deteriorated culverts that need to be replaced. So that's why the money's there. We always find 1 or 2 per year. And then Albert Street, I'm not sure what that one is. Is that the curb? 'Cause that's not wastewater.
It is,
Street
it
does need
says
curb, yeah.
curb and catch basin, but
Okay.
it is under the wastewater category in the
Okay.
capital budget.
Okay, so that would be a stormwater project to deal with some deteriorated curb on that section of street. Certainly, we could repair some of that through operations, but a larger catch basin removal would be difficult to include.
Thank you. Councillor Caldwell.
Question for the Director of Engineering. We have a number of expensive purchases for the fleet, which we always do. But I'm wondering if there's anything there that could be reasonably deferred.
Certainly, I've given that some thought leading up to the first version of the budget. So there were more requests. So I've already whittled it down a little bit. So trying to go through my notes here. To give some idea, the public works truck that we're suggesting to replace is a 2013. It is, it's certainly up there in age. The 5-ton truck is over 20 years old. It's actually 22 years old, and I'm asking to be replaced. The trench box itself is actually for safety from a safety perspective, so we can be more versatile in our trench operations. We're doing more trench work. The compressor that is noted, we have 2 traditionally to meet our operational needs. We're down to 1 now because 1 failed this year. The asset manager did complete a review of the fleet and did suggest to replace the backhoe, one of the backhoes, 47 or 107 this year. And the sidewalk plow that's being replaced is a 1999, so it's getting up there in age. So I did talk to the public works manager, and there is the suggestion at this point to push out the loader, but that's not a 10-year solution. That is maybe pushing it out 1 or 2 years. So I would have to speak to my staff a little bit more on that, but that's my initial reaction right now is maybe pushing out the loader.
Thank you. Before I go back to Councillor Newell, some of mine was, we already talked about the BMA parking lot, but I would like to know the ramifications of reducing that to 25,000. I drove out to the museum parking lot and I didn't understand, like, to me, that might be able to wait for the resurfacing. That's $67,000. I realize that these are smaller numbers, but every bit counts to me. I'm struggling with that. I really want the dog park lighting, but I'm struggling with the $50,000 price tag for the dog park lighting. And also the gazebo at King Street Court. I'm struggling with the price tag on that. And I can't see moving ahead with that. For me, with that price, there's got to be a cheaper alternative. So those are some of the ones that just kind of, along with some of the things that were raised already, like pushing a truck out. I also recognize that the more you push out, costs don't go down. So a $75,000 truck this year is an $80,000 truck next year. And I was hoping for some big numbers like Councillor Newell had, $1 million here, $1 million there. But I also recognize when it comes to wastewater that the reason that we're in this mess is because for 15 or 20 years we pushed out these things and we're paying the price. So I wish there were big ticket items that we could cut, but starting with the small ones, those are the ones I had. So I don't know, Matt, if you can just say, like, if we went down to $25,000 for the BMA parking lot, and if we didn't do the museum, I didn't see why the museum one couldn't be put off. Didn't seem in bad shape.
The museum could be put off. I know through discussions with the Director of Community Development, having some larger discussions about museum rebranding and the need for a sign and the power to a potential sign. So it may make sense to put that one off. So I know it's certainly not, that is certainly an option. With respect to the dog park, I tried to write them all down, so I may miss one, so I apologize. We do have the incorporation of the lighting for the dog park in the GAP project itself, with hopes that we can find a cheaper solution than 50,000. With a lot of that cost that staff I have given you, was really bringing the power in from Glen Ellen, which is at a huge expense. So if the GAP is already bringing in the power that way, we can run it off the pavilion or potentially. That is something we could do. So that certainly is an option. With respect to the gazebo, I have spoken with the facility supervisor. He did an itemized quote for the work. I failed to mention that is also replacing the roof on the landing at the right off King Street themselves. So there's actually two roofs being done. So the only thing that I added to his budget is the addition of crane work to get the materials into that area is quite difficult. So if that takes more than one day or more than one attempt, rental of a crane is expensive. So whether we go the asphalt singles was discussed. It might be marginally cheaper, with the same lifespan as possibly the cedar that's there, since the cedar, I believe, is already 20 years old. Asphalt would be about the same, and the metal roof would give you about a 50-year lifespan. So what I can say is staff did do a quote with our local building supplies and those that supply the metal roofing to get that number where it is. And that does not include labor, because that would be in our operational budget for staff to do it themselves. Okay. Gazebo, dog park, museum. With respect to the BMA and 25,000, certainly we could cut it and patch. There's not a significant amount of parking lot you can do for 25, but still we would be able to do a larger portion than nothing at all. Probably a third of what we completed this year.
Okay, thanks, Matt. That's helpful. Councillor Newell.
Out of curiosity, the crosswalk budget is 100,000, I believe, for 26-27, but then it goes down to 50,000. I'm just curious why that is.
So in discussion, I always have an annual crosswalk budget of $50,000 with not specific locations to be done, but I've got a general idea that are in my budget notes. The specific reason to do 2 next year rather than 1. So at the last budget meeting, I did say that we'd be going to Queen Street to mirror the other crosswalk that we've done at around the Bridgewater Junior High School, and then we'd be going at the bottom of Silver Seal at the trail crossing this year. So the reason why it's double, we're doing 2.
Okay, great. I will say I actually had a resident ask me about the one on Queen Street not long ago, so it's nice to hear that that's on a roadmap.
Thank you. Councillor, why not?
Thank you. Last we spoke about the accessibility plan for Kinsman Field. We didn't have any hard costs included. I know we have a budget of $540K. I guess I'm just wondering, do we have any new information on that? This is kind of a 2-part question. Do we have any new information on that? And secondly, is it an all or nothing solution there? 540K is a big chunk of money that maybe something can be done, because I think we can agree that something should be done there. But is there something that could be done that's maybe not 540K, but it's, 270K or something like that?
I had no further information than what was discussed at budget deliberations with council last time. We have been speaking with our regional accessibility coordinator with some suggestions of that work with no costing. So we're using my best judgment on those numbers. The issue I run into right now is that certainly we need somebody who has the accessibility training that I have limited involvement with or limited background on to give you better numbers associated with those suggestions. But I know that some of the issue we have is there with the new accessibility built environment standard. It may be to what you're suggesting, Councillor Wynot, is it's an all or nothing. Like you make one repair, you have to really go the full Monty, so to speak, or the full way, and not doing a partial solution, because then you're not achieving the accessibility that's desired.
And just pardon my ignorance on this, but do we have anybody on staff that we can consult with, or is this an external somebody, an external consultant that we'd have to talk to?
So, yeah, we've got Ellen Johnson, who is the regional coordinator, but Santa Karimi has also taken the built environment Rick Hansen training, which is all about accessibility for built environment. Jessica and I have talked about this as well, and I think one of the challenges is that as I watch Modal go through their park planning, we probably have to have a bit of a discussion about maybe there's different accessibility levels for different parts of our facilities, and the Glen Allen parks might be way more accessible, and we kind of bill those and advertise those as more accessible, and we might be forced to make a choice to have Kinsman Field as a less accessible facility. That's part of the discussion, I suppose, but it is a tough problem there at the Kinsman Field with a restricted site and an embankment and several facilities all in one. It's really tough. And when we tend to think about accessibility, we tend to think just about mobility, and it's not just mobility in terms of accessibility.
Thank you. Thank you both for your time and your answers.
Deputy Mayor.
On the Kinsman Field, recognizing that we do probably need to look at things more holistically and not just one of our facilities, but have a larger plan for how we want to approach accessibility for our open spaces in general. I would take that out of there at this point, and especially knowing that staff have a plan and are doing a lot of work. That doesn't mean that there's no accessibility work being done in the town of Bridgewater. So that's one that I would remove from that. And also on the parks with the GAP plan, I believe that we said that the funds that are in the budget for this year are related to the accessible playground and planning for the splash pad. Was that also included in there? Because I would remove the splash pad and just focus on the accessible playground right now, if that is the case. I don't know how much that would remove from that total amount, if there is money in there for that.
Right. I believe the tender's out right now for the design work that was in the 25-26 budget. So I think as long as we get bids within budget, that ship has sailed, I guess. The accessible playground, if you look at the budget, we have significant funding for that portion. But if council didn't wish to proceed with the splash pad in the following years, then that's, I presume, still an option. As there's no funding for that at this time. It doesn't mean there won't be by the time we get to next year. But I don't think starting the accessible playground commits you to the splash pad.
No. Thank you. Good question. Councillor Newell.
What are the trail improvements for 73,000? I think I forgive me if I'm wrong, I didn't look it up, but I imagine there's a reoccurring trail improvement expense. So what did that include?
So the trail improvements is there is a multi-year project. We had the bridge assessment completed in 2022. The recommended work with short, medium, and long-term plan recommendations were broken over a 10-year period. So the first few years really are kind of on the lower end, focusing on some concrete repairs, steel repairs, some painting, and general maintenance. That's what is really included in the 73,000 this year. Or sorry, next year. What I can say is I'm having staff reevaluate the 10-year plan with hopes that we can better prioritize it, focusing on there's some other issues that have come about with the trail bridge that may need attention sooner rather than later. So I do plan to come back with a revised 10-year plan. So the items in this year's 73 certainly could be pushed out to wait for later years of we'll say larger requests.
And probably just I guess by the sound of it, at least currently, it's all pretty low key. Like it's aesthetic stuff. It's not like it's not really like if we don't do something, something's going to fall apart. Is that kind of the gist? Okay.
Yeah.
Appreciate it. Thank you.
Councillor Pagier.
Yes, thank you. One of my questions was just what Councillor Newell had asked, so I don't have to ask that. Just with regards to the North Parkade, we have allocated 225,000 for deck repairs, a railing, and some electrical upgrades. I'm just wondering if that's all scheduled for this current fiscal year. It looked like 225.
So council is due a report on the North Parkade assessment. We've had I'm looking at a draft report that's on my desk right now. We've asked for some changes, some comments we provided that need to be incorporated. So we are waiting for the consultant Gemtech to give us the new report, which will be provided to council, and with hopes that we'll be able to proceed with a portion of the recommended repairs. It is in need of repair, definitely. I think everybody.
Yeah, and I'm not saying it doesn't. I just didn't know. I guess if everything costs more today, and based on the recommendations of the report, I guess you have to set what's priority and what's needed first. And I guess my question is if any of it could be spread over 2 years or possibly, but I guess the report will tell.
That is a multi-year program, so that is 1 year. I think either 1 year of 2 or 1 year of 3 investment in the North Parkade.
Okay, great. Thank you very much.
I think we talked about, Matt, at the last meeting in terms of the EV charger that's in like the potential location for an EV charger, with the success we had at the LCLC of finding a third party to take care of that at no cost to the LCLC or the taxpayer in town. I don't know the impact on that. Maybe it's nothing on that 225,000 for the North Parkade, but I'd certainly be in favor of just kind of pulling that out of the spec as we look for a third party to, which there are many, to find a suitable location that doesn't impact the taxpayer.
This actually came up at the last budget deliberation, and that's just a description error. It's not going to reduce your budget at all. I just recirculated the exact same version of the budget, but I do know the Director of Engineering had some descriptions to update for the next version. I just didn't, without making any cuts, I didn't think there was any sense to reproduce at this time.
Okay, no, perfect. Thank you. That's helpful. Deputy Mayor McDonald.
I apologize. I know somebody asked this and I have either forgotten or missed the answer to it in an email. But Winburn Park, I believe there was 20,000 in the budget last year and 20,000 in this year. And I can't recall what the 20,000 this year was going to accomplish. What's been done, what still needs to be done.
So, Council, I would ask Jessica maybe to elaborate a little bit more on what I'll say is we're currently awaiting the playground portions or equipment to arrive so that Public Works and Parks can install them next fiscal year. Jessica, do you have anything more to add to that?
Yes, we are also included in this is the remainder of things that hadn't fully been costed out, such as a facility sign. So we're going through a naming process right now for the park. So needing a facility sign and also to accommodate the built environment standards, seating, and some other items there as well. So.
Does that answer your question, Deputy Mayor?
So those are items that have been ordered, just haven't been received yet, so they'll be paid for in this coming year. Okay, thank you.
Councillor Caldwell.
For the Director of Engineering, you mentioned the crosswalk at Silvers Hill. Is that an urgent matter to be addressed, or is it something that could be deferred? And second, if I could, separate question, Aberdeen and North, when do you expect that presentation to come to council? Because there's possibly significant savings there depending on which option we choose.
With respect to Silvers Hill, certainly with the crosswalk program that is in there, it is listed that I have received a number of complaints on that intersection and potentially a near miss with a motor vehicle. So it is one of those crosswalks, considering that it's first entry into town itself, that we're trying to make it a little bit safe. Understanding that it meets the standard right now, so it is reaction to complaints and incidents. North and Aberdeen. In terms of the presentation, I'm trying to remember a conversation I had this week. We've had a conversation with the consultants on January 16th. We are waiting for them to come back with their recommendations on how to proceed. I would feel comfortable with suggesting that to council that we would push off the Aberdeen and North intersection improvements, at least so that I can get better or confirm the data on traffic counts. Because what has been suggested in the current design is that it certainly has a level of service of C, which is something I'm comfortable with as a traffic authority.
Thank you. Thank you for that $1.5 million. That's helpful. Councillor Newell.
Yeah, who doesn't love 1.5 million? I recognizing that this may be a question that's to go to the chief or the deputy chief, but I'm just wondering if anyone can give me some better understanding of the need for I think a new call radio recorder and live scan units for the police department.
We'll probably have to ask them. I know I just discussed it with them when I had a meeting with them before they added it, but I believe it's failure of current equipment that they need those things. They were not in last year's budget, and I'm pretty sure they're both fairly low value, but there are certainly things I think that they have failed, at least one of the two.
Okay. And I'm just wondering, what is the level of need of the Brookside Cemetery road resurfacing? Can't talk anymore.
So with that one, it's an area that I frequently walk. I'd encourage everybody to get out there if they don't. So when you're coming off Victoria, and you drive straight to the pond. To your left or to your right, when you go up to where there's a laydown area for soil and whatnot, that section where it dips down and comes back up was paved prior to me being here, but it's quite deteriorated. So we would need to remove that asphalt either put it back to gravel, which then creates a maintenance issue, and we do need to deal with the drainage. So I've noticed over time it has been a request of the cemetery operator as well to repair. So can it be pushed off? We could probably do some patching in the area, but it is something we're going to have to deal with eventually, especially the drainage in that low area.
Thank you, Councillor Colwell.
Just back to Aberdeen and North. I'm just wondering if we were to push that off, is this just it's put on hold until we get results of a new traffic report from that area? Like, are we looking at a year or perhaps many years? It's just hard to say.
Again, to give a bit of context, the traffic operation study was done in 2021. So my understanding after talking with on the January 16th meeting with the designer, the data that was used was 2024 data for the Aberdeen at LaHave. So we would do a small traffic study, traffic count for intersections prior to doing them. So when we completed the Aberdeen at LaHave, we captured traffic data for that corridor. That information was then used to review the North and Aberdeen, because we actually couldn't capture traffic data because of the construction on that area. So with 1-year-old data, it does suggest that we probably don't need to do repairs until 2045. So to confirm that is the case, so to your point, I think we could push it a few years for sure. And I just want to confirm that with new traffic data.
Okay. Thank you, Councillor Newell.
Out of curiosity, what are the upgrades slated for Dufferin York, or I guess what's the impact of us not doing it? It's a small item, but nonetheless.
I suggested not doing those. Part of that same traffic study I just referred to, they recommended that from a level of service perspective, that intersection would operate perfectly fine with four-way stop. I see no real need to remove functioning traffic lights, so that is put in there every year until I find out they don't function, and then I'll remove them. So that can be pushed as well.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor.
That was good. That answered one of my questions, so I can get to another one. Is the capacity to do road work at all impacted by the amount of capital work that we have for wastewater? Because there's separate staff, like that's contracts. It's not going to affect our ability to do all the road work that we would typically do in the run of a summer, is it?
That is a good question. So I would say that we certainly are used to 1 or 2 contractors who work in the area that would do pipe work as well as road work, particularly one. And I would say we were challenged this year to complete all of our road work in sufficient time before Christmas. So I wouldn't want to see us try to do any more.
Yeah, I'm gonna maybe just speak on that one a little bit. I actually do think they are related. I mean, at the end of the day, there's only one director of engineering, and he still has to oversee the work. And you know, I respect the fact that we have a span of control and different staff, but at the end of the day, there is only so much processing capacity for all these projects in the town between procurement and overseeing some of the work. So yeah, there is some separation, but there's definitely a limit. And so just a little bit of nuance there, because Matt probably is thinking he can do it all. And I would just say that he's only, despite the fact he's an engineer, he's only one man.
With a very great team.
May I follow up?
Yes, yeah.
So would you consider reducing the budget for like a regular road work for a year? To allow some capacity to do the wastewater work that needs to be done? I know we don't want to watch the roads go backwards, and now we're in the same position with roads that we were in with wastewater. But also, if we can't do that much work, or it's going to spread some or all of you too thin, should we scale it back a little bit this year, focus where it needs to be, knowing we're gonna have to catch up later, but it may not get done this year?
That is a difficult question because the complaints we receive per year, I think staff, because pavement management goes through a process. So certainly looking at our short list, we're able to accommodate that in our workload. The impacts of that short list to repairs to our catch basins and manholes, curbs and whatnot, certainly have been in an annual work program for Public Works. So that should be easy. We can accommodate those projects, or mini projects happen, in June and July. So the biggest issue I foresee this year is more the actual paving, which staff don't do. We rely on a contractor, so making sure they are attentive to our request of when we want to get the work done. That is probably the biggest challenge, along with that same contractor doing some of our larger intersection work, some of our larger pipe work as well. So, removing, we'll say, north of Aberdeen as an example, that's one less major project in town, which, that's something would have a greater impact to our work plan than it would be minimizing or cutting pavement management at this point.
Councillor Newell.
Out of curiosity, the boom truck, according, I think, to the budget documents I have, it says it's from 2017, and we're looking to replace it, or what's being done with the 170K for the 2017 boom truck?
So the chassis is fine. That is this replacement of the boom itself.
Okay, and that's it absolutely needs to be done?
Correct.
Matt, when you talked earlier about there might be one, I can't remember if you said it's a truck or a loader that might be able to be deferred. Do you know the price of that? I'm just trying to add up all the stuff we've talked about.
The loader was and I certainly from today's council will probably follow up a little bit more with the Public Works manager, but that's $530,000 that I would say be pushed out. I can't guarantee any more than maybe 1 or 2 years, but it would push it out.
Okay. Just because I'm looking at so far, what I'm seeing is around $2.2 million of between deferral and cuts. That's what I'm seeing is if we at least move out north in Aberdeen, the dog park lighting waits for finding out where the power is coming from, defer the museum parking lot, reduce the BMA paving to I just threw out 25,000, but the council can decide if that's a different number. The 15,000 for Dufferin and York, and then the loader at 530. So that's where I was at. Just in terms of, not that we're keeping score, keeping tabs. That's the word I'm looking for. Keeping score.
We're all keeping tabs.
Councillor Newell, you had another question?
Oh, I have plenty of questions. Absolutely. I apologize. Just to clarify, when something's in carry forward, it's already committed, right? There's no changing that.
That's typically correct. Council does formally approve that carry forward list. We just probably bring that sometime in February once we're sure we know, sometimes a piece of equipment might get delivered. that's been ordered and things like that. So if the playground equipment, for example, for Windburn happens to show up, then it doesn't end up on the carry forward list and we just remove it, and things like that. So we try to hold off as long as possible. So we'll bring the carry forward list should be very similar to what is in this budget document, but we do a final assessment of, did it get completed? At this time, it's just things we knew weren't completed back in December when we started this process. And then we also bring to you any pre-approvals for things in the 26-27 that we want to get a head start on tendering, in anticipation of budget approval coming later.
Excellent. But at least for the purposes of this discussion, we should consider carry forward as committed money, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
Yes.
Perfect. Do we know, and maybe there's another question you might have had chatted with the police department. Do you know how essential that 90,000 is for a new Marks police car is?
Often they end up with wear and tear. We've had some instances with their vehicles just being completely out of commission because they're just driving around all day. It's not high kilometers. It sort of is, but it's just continuous use. But we can inquire. They tend not to replace them unless they need to, and have been replacing some with electric vehicles where feasible, but we can certainly have that conversation, or we can have maybe it's best if I just send him an email that I can circulate to council with the answer to that question, as I most certainly didn't invite him to the meeting tonight thinking most of the questions were for the Director of Engineering.
But I do think that we're having a budget conversation soon at the Police Commission, and these are good questions to have with the police chief at that time as well. We typically discuss it there and we discuss it at council, and we great if we could have a more detailed conversation at the Police Commission and try to answer some of these questions in more detail.
We'll
And
make sure
I
that
am
question
aware
gets asked,
that, sorry, I'm aware that there are more things that were discussed at the Police Commission from a capital perspective that are not reflected in this budget. And that could show up in the next version. So,
Okay.
yeah.
One of the things that the challenges we have with police vehicles is the lead time. We've had ones where we've waited, 8, 9, 10, 12 months for a police car. So that would also be one of the questions that we should ask, but we'll ask that question to the chief. Councilor
He's
Newell?
already told me it's on his pre-approval list, so he can get it ordered ASAP so that it arrives potentially next fiscal year. Yep.
Okay. Councilor Newell, did you have another question?
Oh, sorry. Yes, I did. I thought somebody else had their hand up first. I'm trying to be nice. Just out of curiosity, and forgive me if I missed this. So the gap for 26-27, gap conceptual plan, that's at 475. If I remember last year, we budgeted, I think, 100,000 for the accessible playground. Is the other 375 going entirely to design?
Nope, you've got that backwards. So
Okay.
the previous year amount is the design work, and the 26-27 would be for the accessible playground. And then there's subsequent amount. The total is 1.155 million. So the rest of that isn't in carry forward or in the 26-27 is the splash pad. So it's a
roughly
multi-year.
the 600,000 is the splash pad, and the 475 is for the playground, roughly.
Roughly, yes. So if we look at, I'm just flipping to 27-28 on my screen. Yes, 600,000 is in the 27-28 for the splash pad. Sorry.
Thank you.
Other questions from council? So we have some to carry us over to the Police Commission meeting. Councilor, why not?
Not a question. I'm just going back, Mayor Mitchell. You had calculated, and I'm keeping tabs too. You had about 2.2 million.
Yep.
Did that include the Kinsman Field?
No, it didn't actually.
Because that could be substantial depending on what direction we want to take there. So that gets us pretty close. But so yeah, not a question. Just I wasn't sure if that was in your total or not.
It wasn't.
Keep in mind that Kinsman's only 40,000 this year. The
This
rest
year,
would
yeah.
be realized for future years.
Right.
Yeah, but no, I didn't have that. So if council wants to remove that, then it goes to almost like it's 2.275.
Yeah.
But yeah, we should put that. I think a number have asked about that one. Councillor
Um,
Caldwell. Oh, sorry. Yep. Kim.
Sorry. For the Kinsman Field, that one is spread out over 5 years. With some money, a smaller amount in the 26-27 year. And I do know there was some discussion about at least an interim measure with a handrail. So I don't know if we want to remove the whole Kinsman Field or just the larger amounts in the future years, which haven't specifically been defined as a particular outcome. But I think Matt, you can perhaps discuss if there's any need to keep a small amount in the Kinsman just for some things to resolve some of the larger complaints about Buffield.
Yeah, I think it's just
Accessibility?
because council's wondering what that, I think we weren't sure it was a handrail. Do you know what I mean? I don't think we have it defined what that money was. I thought it was more to continue the investigation. But Matt, does that money go towards something?
The 40,000 is to focus on the design, and what I can say is the handrail discussion has come up. I guess the issue I have with that is not an accessibility improvement per se, and I would lean on certainly on Ellen with respect to that, because as given that as of April 1st, 2026, we have to make improvements that fall under the built environment, and the handrail isn't necessarily one of those. Even though it's a practical solution, it's not a solution from an accessibility lens. I guess the best I could explain it, but it would be something that we could review with Ellen in depth.
I would think it would help seniors going up and down that steep bank, though, which is
It's
certainly
one-
yeah.
It's once you make an improvement, you have to actually meet the standard. So
Ah.
if the grade itself, while the handrail, I agree, we would probably do that solution for our own home. The grade is still the issue, and if it needs to be at 1 to 20, that grade is more like 1 to 6. So we'd have to put the handrail in and deal with the grade issue.
Okay, that's helpful information to understand that. So okay.
Right.
Yeah.
So we need some idea of whether you were looking to cut the whole $540,000 program for now. I know that community development's working on a parks plan for
It's hard to
council.
know without the information, right? Like you kind of need to spend the 40 to understand if the rest of the money is going to achieve the result that you want, or yeah. But I
So
appreciate
that's
the
kind of the
answer.
direction on whether we should spend a little bit of money, take the other years out until it's more well defined. I just know from my perspective, just if we leave tonight without some exact direction on Kinsman Field, Matt and I won't know what we're supposed to leave in and take out.
Agreed. Yeah. Councilor Caldwell.
I had a separate question, but I guess since we're talking about Kinsman Field, I will say that I just think it should be taken out for now until we get a better holistic idea of what we're doing with our recreation sites. But my question was, yeah, so we've talked about not just this meeting, but a couple other meetings. We've talked about a lot of potential cuts. So I'm just wondering, like, what's our next step? Are we deciding right now what we're planning to leave out, or are we staff coming back with some of the things we've talked about? I'm just wondering what happens from here.
The goal tonight is to leave staff with some direction of the cuts that we would like to see. I mean, obviously, when we get down to the budget, anything, as Kim would say, if you make changes on budget night, then she has to change her numbers, and it's going to change the cost of things and borrowing. But the goal is to give them some direction tonight. So if council says, like, we're going to push off Aberdeen for a year, then that's 1.5 million that she's going to pull out of that for this year. So that's the goal tonight, yes. But the final vote, obviously, is when we do the budget. Does that help?
Yep.
Yeah. Okay.
Yes, yeah, I was just wondering if staff were going to sort of go away and sort of come back with something, but we're actually going to give them some direction tonight.
That would,
Yeah.
if council's comfortable with giving some direction tonight, that's what I would like to do.
Sure.
Deputy Mayor McDonald.
Could one of the people who have been keeping a summary of the projects that we've discussed cutting and the amounts give us a bit of a summary so that we I know if I'm on the same page as you.
Kim, are you running a total for those? I have some, but
I
have
am.
some-
In case any.
I
Yeah,
think
I-
we've all got numbers.
Yes,
Yep.
it just depends on how many years we're summarizing. For example, like Kinsman, if we leave 40,000 in but cut 125 for the next 4 years after that. So,
I'm just looking to cut. I'm just looking for this year.
okay.
Yeah, let's focus on this year.
All right.
Do you have a number, Kim, for this year?
So I have reducing the BMA parking lot by 75,000, cutting or pushing out the museum parking lot, pushing out the loader, the dog park lighting, the trail bridge work, the Centennial Trail Bridge work, North and Aberdeen at 1.5 million, and the Dufferin and York, that gives me 2.31 million. Just for 26-27.
Sorry, what was that number again?
2.31 million. 2,310,000. And that's not removing the current amount for Kinsman, as there seems to still be some discussion on whether that's the right thing. I know that there seems to be interest in at least getting this investigation done on that.
There was also the discussion about the cemetery as well. Brookside Cemetery repairs.
Oh, yeah,
200,000.
And the work on Albert and Elm Streets, under the wastewater category. Whether those could be pushed out, I don't think they can be eliminated, but they were certainly on there.
For me, I certainly get nervous about pushing out wastewater just because of the pickle that we're in. The Kinsman, I'd like us to have a discussion on that because I don't think maybe we're on the same page, just haven't kind of fleshed that out, but I'd like to have a discussion on that, where that lands. Deputy Mayor?
Wrong button, sorry. I was just gonna say, if we were looking for consensus on the Kinsman Field, I would take it out and have a larger view as part of the parks plan of what, like the deputy CAO said, how are we tackling it? Are we focusing on certain parks? Are we picking up projects one by one? Is it complaint based? How are we tackling it?
And we have talked about that, trying to put together a more prioritized list of what the parks are and what the overall plan is. Then at least you can make an informed decision if you're going to spend $500,000 on one park. If it's your priority 1, well, that makes sense. But if it's priority 5, does it still make as much sense? Yeah.
And to me, it was just like a light went off when Matt said, if you can't just do these little improvements because if it doesn't meet the standard, then it starts to cause a whole cascading effect. So I'm also in that, postponing that for now until we get a larger sense of what we're looking at for parks. I saw some shaking or nodding their heads. Councillor Neal, you were in agreement with that. I don't know. Councillor Conklin, you're nodding your head. Councillor Wynot and Councillor Caldwell and Councillor Fragier, where are you on the Kinsman? I see. Would you like to see that 40,000 out right now for this year?
I just have a question. if I
Yep.
may. So for the Kinsman Field, just for clarification purposes, is a report coming to council? Because I thought there was an assessment being done.
An assessment was done with engineering staff and with the regional accessibility coordinator.
Right.
So we do have a draft presentation The concern I have is that it is very high level with no cost, which is what I struggle with putting to those. But certainly, I think it would be a great idea to hear from Ellen specifically on that, because she would be the best to articulate the concerns with, as what I talked about with handrail versus a holistic view to meet the accessible built environment standard, to make sure you have the most accurate and up-to-date information.
Yeah, and that's what I think I would appreciate, sort of having more information to make those future decisions. Yeah.
So what can we ask, Mark, can we ask Ellen to perhaps come to council between now and when we make a budget decision, and we can take this out, because I'm seeing the majority of council want to take it out, but we can put it back in if council deems the presentation from Ellen means it should stay in.
Yes, we can certainly have that presentation.
Okay.
Yeah.
I know the number's not nothing, but it's I know Kim wants numbers on the final day, long ahead before the final day, but when we look at the larger budget, it's not like at the last minute popping North and Aberdeen back in. So, Councillor Caldwell.
Where did we stand with the town hall generator?
That's next year's budget. It's in next year's budget, so I don't think we've really tackled. I wanted to kind of not get, there's a lot of things in next year's budget that I didn't want to get off track.
Yeah. I thought it was in this year.
Yeah, unless I'm mistaken, I thought I saw it in 27, 28.
Correct.
Yeah, you could be right. Yeah.
we could talk about it, but I'd like to try to keep us into this year. Are there other questions on this item? So Kim, if you take that 40,000 out, again, we'll have Ellen come, and council certainly reserves the right to put it back in, but you have your total for that. Are there other questions from council? Councillor Caldwell?
One more. So we mentioned the upgrades to the trail bridge. Did we is there a consensus on that?
I think that the
yeah,
director
Kim
of
had them out.
engineering suggested that one could be moved out in the discussion, and I do have it in my total. It
They were
can't be
for
removed,
aesthetics,
but I think
not
it was
for
a bump out.
They were for aesthetics, not for safety, you said, right, Matt?
Correct. Although with the caveat that we need to look at the 10-year plan, and hopefully we can come back to council on that 10 years, either probably during the next fiscal year.
Okay, and we're gonna get some answers from the police chief on the live scan, the call logger, and the police vehicle, just for some clarification. So we'll get that information to council. Any other questions? All right, Kim, did you have anything else to add before we move on to the agenda?
No, that brings us to 2.35 million, including the Kinsman in there. So certainly if there was anything in because we're still looking at the whole debt service ratio. So most of what we're doing is pushing things out. There's not a lot of removes. So eventually our debt service ratio will still catch up with us. Just by moving these out, we'll still end up in the same long-term position in 10 years. So if there was anything in those future years, certainly happy to discuss if anything else should be moved around or removed, but I know the focus is on 26, 27 right now.
To me, the big one in that is the North and Aberdeen. I know it's right now we're moving to wait for Matt to get some information, but in my head, if the information comes back and says the intersection, whatever, is fine, or it just needs a few tweaks, then that actually eventually could be cut. But it depends on what Matt gets back from traffic counts and data like that. Because I do understand that with the improvements, Silvers Hill and the intersection that we just did, it does probably alleviate some traffic there, so. Yeah, Councilor Newell?
Yeah, Kim, so I think roughly to your math, we're somewhere around the 2.4 million, give or take. Are you hoping that council is going to come back, or we're going to continue discussion to get to another roughly 600,000?
No, I think we would revise the budget as it stands. Again, mentioning that some things for the police could change. As I know, there was an addition talked about at the last commission meeting, so that we're not going to end up probably at 2.35. It might be a little bit less. Really, ideally, if there's anything else you want to discuss, I'd like to get through it tonight if possible. I know it's a lot, but it takes a lot of work to recalculate the debt service ratio. So once I kind of once we revise the budget and redo all those estimates for you and present it again, we can still make changes for sure. But yeah, there's things that we should be talking about. While we have the directors all here, it's a good time.
Yeah, forgive me. It's not. It's more so me, being a new counselor. Forgive my lack of understanding. It's more so I want to make sure that I guess you have what you need, because the initial ask was 3 million, and obviously we're not there yet. So I want to make sure you have what you need, or if we need to continue to hand this out, because I think we've pretty much gotten through all like the optional stuff, the stuff we really can. So I mean, it's like to me, is there a question? Do we need to come back and say, no, we have to remove another 600,000? Does that mean we just don't buy a truck? And that's just what I'm trying to still grapple with.
So that's a great question, Councilor Newell, just because it's some of the things they don't teach you when you go through the campaign school and stuff like that, right? So the goal, Kim's goal, based on the debt service ratio, was that 3 million. There's going to be years we can't meet 3 million. There's going to be years where we're going to have projects that we can probably cut or get funding to be more than that 3 million that we're cutting. You can see it. Well, you know how difficult it is to find. There's not a lot of fat to trim on these budgets. So to Kim's point, now is the time if we can find stuff, but if something else comes up, we can make adjustments. It's not set in stone tonight. Yeah. So that's
And
Kim's
definitely,
goal of 3
I
million.
didn't have the 3 million wasn't a goal, but I needed you to understand what kind of number we're talking about to be impactful, because 500,000 wasn't going to make a dent. But I needed you to see like the implications of not 3 million, but 3 million a year to kind of get under that 30%. And then, wastewater treatment plant, we don't probably have enough information on funding and or on actual costs, but it's in there because it has to be represented at the best information we have at the time. So I'm expecting that number only to change over time as well. But yeah, we definitely needed you to understand that it needed to be a big number tonight.
Thank you. All right. If there's no other questions, thank you as always to staff and to council. Lots of questions tonight, so I appreciate that. And I know you've all been digging through this. If you do see something else and you have questions, please, through the acting CAO, make sure those questions get asked. Like I said, Kim would like these numbers today, but if they aren't set in stone. So if you have something else that can be cut beyond the police questions that we have, please make sure you ask them. So thank you. Down to 10.2. Oh,
No,
sorry,
just
Mark.
saying thanks to Kim. I know this is a lot of detailed work, and it's a grind getting through this, and she's actually been at this for a few months now. So yeah, appreciate the effort.
Yeah. Thank you, Kim. Thank you to
All the directors, because I just take what they give me and figure out how to pay for it. And run the numbers and debt service ratios, but certainly engineering provides a huge contribution, as well as community development. So that's information that I don't have. They provide the data that you see in the budget document.
Perfect. Thank you. Thank you to our senior leadership team. Okay, down to 10.2, approval of amendment for personnel policy and procedures. I think we gave notice at the last meeting for this. Mark, do you want to lead us through this one?
I think actually Kim was
Oh,
going
it's Kim doing it?
speak to this one. Yeah.
I am, but I have to change my brain here for a second quickly. Just to
Yep.
get so I'm just opening the report as I had too many things going on too many screens. So essentially it came to our attention that perhaps our pay for temporary assignment policy really didn't anticipate long-term assignments in the acting roles or in vacancies. It often really was just dealing with vacation. If someone took a couple weeks vacation and someone was acting in someone else's role, but it hadn't really taken into account any long-term assignments, just mostly because we haven't seen a lot of that. And so our personnel policy currently just addresses one option for that, and for anything over 3 days and then over 5 days. Myself, I worked with one of our HR consultants from MJSB, as well as our CAO, to determine what might be a fair alternative to add to the current policy. And so we're recommending that this alternate option be added for assignments over 30 calendar days. So it really kind of captures those kind of longer term, not someone out for a short period of time, most likely on vacation. And we actually specify in the policy that it's for reasons other than vacation. So that for vacation, the old policy is the only portions that apply, but that the CAO may approve an increase, bringing the employee's pay to the step in the salary scale of the temporarily vacant position that is closest to, but not less than, the acting personnel's current salary. Because in some cases they could be 2 salary grades difference between the acting person and the permanent person. So it just allows some of that salary gap to be filled in. So subject, and there are cases where the old policy might actually still be better, depending on where the incumbent was on the salary scale in their role. So we would, for any absences other than vacation over 30 days, we would actually calculate it both ways, and the employee would get the higher of the two. I'd done some sample calculations to gauge kind of where that would be. And in some cases, one is better than the other. But it does give us an alternate calculation. And again, for specific financial impacts, it is very specific to who's acting and who's away. Every situation would be different because the current is based on the, I guess, absent person's exact salary. So it's never going to be easy to calculate. To give you a rough idea, it's very specific calculation that's done by payroll. And so we're just asking that this be included in the personnel policy, and such that it just gives us one more option for those longer term assignments. Hopefully that makes sense.
Yep. Does anyone have questions on this? Perfect. Hearing none, is someone prepared to make a motion? Councillor Caldwell.
Move the town council for the town of Bridgewater approve the amendments to section 7.10 pay for temporary assignment of the personnel policy and procedures manual to add subsection 2C, which pertains to temporary work coverage for a period of greater than 30 days as outlined in document 26-010 dated December 10, 2025.
Thank you. Seconded by Councillor Newell. Further discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor? Those opposed? Motion is carried. Thank you. Christine, we're just going to make you wait and wait and wait. They're like, you know what? How do we get people to attend our council meeting? We put them towards the end of the agenda. We're almost there. We have the request from the food bank that we had their presentation today. And there is a motion in your package to refer it to the budget deliberations. What is the wish of council? Someone prepared to make that, Deputy Mayor?
I ask a question first.
Yep.
So that would be referred to our operating budget, but not to grants to organizations or just the general budget?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah,
So I think.
Go ahead,
Sorry.
Mark.
Yeah, I think Jessica had a point on this as well. Because yeah, grants to organizations was the place that she was asking about. Sorry, Jessica, I don't know if you want to jump in to answer that.
Well, I don't know that I have an answer. It was more of, my question was, would this be referred to the grants to organizations? The budget for the 25-26 year was only $45,000 total. And some of those grants are already committed for the ongoing, 3-year operational grants that max out at $5,000. So this would be outside of the scope with which the grants to organizations policy contemplates. But it could be in years past, it depends on what council wishes to do. Sometimes they have funded something separately. It still is a grant to an organization. It still gets tracked through that process.
And I would just add that the commitment to the hospital expansion runs through the council support budget that doesn't run through grants to organizations. So we have separately dealt with things, including the Paralympic para sports stuff that was happening, the 55 plus games, like those tend not to go through grants to organization. But I guess usually the council ones are more one-offs, but I anticipate that there's potential that the food bank could be looking for an annual commitment more in the long term. And then we could or if these are more frequently coming for larger asks, then I would suggest council look at increasing the grants to organization budget, so that in fairness, all organizations are evaluated together. But if this were a one-time ask, I think that it could be going through the regular budget process, like the hospital support that was a multi-year commitment, but more of a one-time thing. But in the long term, I would rather see the grants to organization increase so that staff were evaluating all organization in the community requests together. From my side of that's strictly up to council.
Thank you. I was also kind of wondering if we were going to be asking the same information that we would typically be asking when we're considering a grant. So that helps to understand that it's not within the scope of the grants to organization, but we have done other things before. Got it.
Councillor Caldwell.
Yeah, I'm just wondering, I'm just a little on the fence about the not having it go through grants to organizations. I wonder if maybe we talk about it through the budget deliberations, and as part of that, we consider even, if we're interested in funding all or part of it, that we consider just increasing the budget for grants to organizations for the year and have it go through there to see that, are we spending it in the right place? I don't know. It's just hard when, obviously the food bank needs money and we should support that, but there's also a lot of other organizations that need money. I don't know. It's hard.
Yeah, so council can very much, that's a great suggestion, Councillor Caldwell. So council can, through the budget deliberation, say, this item we don't want to just put through our regular budget process. We'd like to move this to grants to organizations, if that's what council wishes to do. So we don't have to make that determination now, right, Kim? We can, during the budget process, refer that to that
Right. So we would likely flow that through because we're just working on the version 2 of the operating budget that council hasn't seen yet, we could add it to one spot or the other. So it would show as an addition, either in grants to organizations in community development budget, or add it to the council or sponsorship or support in the administration budget. We can add it either place, and you can decide on the final destination and how you would like this request administered, but I would like to at least run it through the budget so that you can see it in there, and then you, during budget deliberations, you would choose what to do. And the ask is about $33,000 from the food bank, the net of their tax exemption.
Thank you. Jessica?
Just the grants to organizations process, it's open now, and the applications are due by March 1st, I believe. Can't remember which day of the week March 1st falls, so something close to March 1st. So if we do want it to be considered through that process, then we should also, I can connect with the food bank about it. They have their presentation, but that they also submit an application through that process. Then you can still determine where it would go.
Well, that's probably not a bad idea to do that. And to the deputy mayor's point, getting the information that we would normally require or ask of applicants for applying for a grant to organizations through that process is probably, again, for transparency and fairness as we do that. So that's not a bad idea. So everyone understand that we, like the ask, we could still put this through the budget process while also in parallel getting that information and having them apply. Does that make sense? Does someone want to make a motion to refer this to Deputy Mayor?
Just got to flip screens. I move that Town Council for the Town of Bridgewater refer the request from the Bridgewater Food Bank for a grant in the amount of $40,000 less property tax exemption to the 2026-2027 budget deliberations.
Thank you. Seconded by Councillor Wynot. Further discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor? Those opposed? Motion is carried. Thank you. Down to new business. The building inspection report is in there for December. Another busy year. And just a reminder to the public that are watching on social media that all our documents are available on the town's website under council and agenda and documents, and you can see all the documents that we have, you have access to as well. And now, Christine, we are down to the item for Region 6 26-27 budget. This is in your agenda package. I don't know if you had were you going to speak to this, Christine, or were you just here for observing?
Yes. Sorry, yes, I'm here to speak on it, and I did not prepare another PowerPoint, or the document that you received is the one that I would like to refer to. See if I can share my screen here. Okay. Can you see my presentation?
I'm just waiting for mine to wake up.
It's black for me.
Yeah, same for me. There we go.
Oh, there we go. Oh,
okay.
Yep.
Oh, okay. I'll really go through this fairly quickly. You've had the document to have a look at. So basically, the Region 6 budget, the total budget for this year is $147,885, and that's for the Region 6. That's the total budget, which would be shared by all the municipal units within Region 6. So the ask for Town of Bridgewater, based on population percentage, that comes in at $14,083.83 as the portion asked of you. So perhaps in my after my discussion with Deputy Ciego, really what is Region 6, that there may be some councillors who are not familiar. So Region 6, we're a committee of council representing the 12 municipal units along the South Shore and the West Hants area. So you have a voting member appointed, and Councillor Fougere fills that role, and with the alternate of Mike Conklin, Councillor Conklin as the alternate. And basically, Region 6 provides some administrative services. We're required under legislation to have to achieve certain goals in solid waste management. So Region 6, myself and Angela Taylor, our educator, we help fulfill that role. So we help in representing everybody in all the units in Region 6 to the province, so acting as a liaison and providing really solid waste expertise and education. So we do work along with the Municipal Joint Services Board to help amplify and support what they do, but also to represent to higher levels, Department of Environment, Divert Nova Scotia. So I'll just leave it there as to exactly what we do, and maybe we'll get into the heart of it. Just want to hit some high points. So basically, what we're asking for the budget of 147,000, it's the shortfall between funding that we receive from outside agencies. So in order to provide our operations or services, that the shortfall in between the funding that we receive, that's what the 147 is, the ask. So our expenses, operations, education, but certainly the bulk of the expenses of Region 6 are the funds that we return to the municipal units. So in providing the administrative services to help you apply for funding and achieve the maximum amount of funding, there's a lot of funds that flow directly through our office and straight back out to you. So that being diversion credits, dairy funding, municipal approved programs funding, enforcement funding. So there's a fair amount of funding, and it just flows through us. So we don't, so you will get cash payments, but the ask of the $14,083 is for excuse me, to pay for operations. So we're just going through summarizing some of the details. So you know, the revenue that we've got coming in, $210,000, $998, and that's from contracts and service agreements. And those are the funds that we keep to pay for our operations. Then we have stewardship incentives. So those funds that I had mentioned were coming in at a conservative estimate at 467,000, and that would mean once a surplus that we had remaining, $8,365 was applied to further reduce the municipal billing to get us down to 147,885. So expenses, just general operating expenses for Angela and I, and you know, our office, our expenses, and it also includes our waste app, our 6 Recycles waste app, which is a service to our residents to be able to look up items. Where does it go, and to provide scheduling for waste pickup as well as service interruptions. So total ask we've gone through, but if I could put some tangible numbers maybe on that. So based on population, it means you're paying about $1.60 per person. And for that, with the funding, we do the administrative work, and the funding that you get back is roughly $6.03. For a net gain of $4.43. So it would provide the services in order to be able to maximize that funding to you. And so those funds are directed to Joint Services Board, which I assume offsets the cost that Town of Bridgewater would have to pay for the Joint Services Board. But payments are made, and just to put it in numbers, so in 2024-25, provided to Joint Services Board was 385,000, just under 385,000. So I don't want to bury the story, but you pay $1.60 and you get $6.03 back. So certainly that's all I wanted to touch on, and certainly open for questions.
Thanks, Christine. Any questions from members of council? I mean, it's good return on our investment, and just again a reminder for the public, because this one is always a kind of a confusing one. So with the motion that we're going to make is to approve the entire municipal budget, but as Christine said, our portion of that 147,000 is around 14,000. So I don't want people, when they hear that we're approving 147,000, thinking that's the Town of Bridgewater's share. So just a reminder there. So if there's no questions, is someone prepared to make a motion? Councillor Frazier? Oh, we just need you to unmute there.
Mute. Yeah, I'll make a motion, Your Worship. So I move that Town Council for the Town of Bridgewater endorse the recommendation of the Region 6 Intermunicipal Committee and approve the 2026-2027 Region 6 budget in the total amount of $147,885 as presented in document 26-014.
Thank you. Seconded by Councillor Conklin. Further discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor? Those opposed? Motion is carried. Thank you, Christine. Thanks for sticking around. You can still stick around if you want.
Thank you very much, but I think that's I'll call it a night.
All right. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Christine.
Thank you.
Appreciate it.
Okay. 11.3 is our discussion session notes from our last discussion session, where we had a very good presentation that some members of council had met with a company that did some fundraising work at one of our conferences. And so that's in the discussion session notes there. And now we're going down to first reading for rezoning of 40 Victoria Road from R4 to R5.
Good evening. Let me just get my screen here for you.
Gotta find out where Evan is. Oh yeah, bottom left on mine.
There we go. Can everybody see my presentation okay?
Yes.
Excellent. Okay, well, I'll get started. Good evening, Mayor and Councillors. I'm here to present to you on the application for rezoning from downtown residential to medium density residential for 40 Victoria Road. The application was received on September 15th, 2025, and the application briefing was presented to Council on October 27th, 2025. The applicant is seeking to construct a 4-unit residential building on the currently vacant property. This requires a map amendment to the land use bylaw with no changes needed to the municipal planning strategy. The property sits at the border of a downtown residential R4 zoned area and the historic downtown commercial C1 zone, bisected by Pleasant Street. The surrounding area contains a mix of uses with single-unit dwellings, 2-unit and multi-unit dwellings, green space abutting a cemetery, and nearby commercial on King Street. The property is located within a 13-minute walk from the South Shore Center and 20 minutes from the South Shore Regional Hospital. Seen here from Victoria Road, the property currently sits vacant, with the previous structure, a 3-unit dwelling, demolished in early 2025. Seen here from Pleasant Street, where parking access for the property was previously situated, and where parking must continue to be accessed as per engineering's IM6 comments. The municipal's planning strategy's future land use map includes the property in its medium density residential designation. This designation allows for multiple unit dwellings up to a maximum of 4 units, meaning no changes to the MPS are required with this application. The medium density designation is intended to enable compact and more affordable housing options while allowing higher density developments through a development agreement. The proposal is supported by all the applicable objective statements in the MPS. It would provide housing opportunities for healthcare workers, supporting the town as a regional employment and service center. It will provide compact development to maximize the town's shared infrastructure while providing new housing options for people to live out their lives in Bridgewater. And it will contribute to a mix of compatible land uses, promoting diverse and convenient neighborhoods. The current R4 zone allows for up to 2 dwelling units as of right. The previous structure, comprised of 3 dwelling units, was allowed under the conversion allowance in our land use bylaw, which grants an additional unit for structures constructed before August 1975. The R5 zone will allow multi-unit dwellings up to a maximum of 4 units. The zoning standards for both the R4 and R5 zones retain a 10-meter height maximum, while the front yard setback for R5 is twice as restrictive, requiring a 6-meter setback from the property's frontage. Side yard setbacks, similarly, are extended to 4 meters, or half the length of the building. The property sits within Bridgewater's architectural control area, meaning any new construction will be required to conform to requirements outlined in Section 6.2 of the Land Use Bylaw. These controls necessitate that new structures built in the area are to conform to distinct pre-1920 architectural styles present in Bridgewater, or an architectural style approved by the development officer. Item 6 comments from the engineering department highlighted no major concerns associated with the proposal. Wastewater capacity is sufficient to support the additional dwelling unit, and the wastewater betterment charge would apply, providing funding for future infrastructure improvements. The adequacy of wastewater capacity is in part determined by this change from 3 to 4 units. The town's design and construction standards considered 3-unit buildings to fall under the category of single-unit or townhouse dwellings, which are judged at a standard of 3.35 people per unit. The proposed 4-unit dwelling would be considered under the category of a multi-unit dwelling, which are judged by a 2.25 person per unit value. As such, the proposal of a 4-unit building is calculated at a lower total estimated population, with no anticipated increased strain on wastewater capacity. A public participation meeting was held on November 5th of last year. The meeting was attended by 4 members of the public, as well as 2 individuals representing the applicant. Concerns were voiced regarding the future prospective tenants and the possibility of the site being used as a social support space. The applicant was able to assuage these concerns, clarifying that the rentals will be primarily intended for healthcare workers employed by their company. All 4 members of the public were satisfied that their concerns were addressed and offered their support for the proposal. It is therefore staff's recommendation that council give first reading to the proposed map amendment and schedule a public hearing for the proposed map amendment for February 23rd, 2026 during the regular meeting of council beginning at 6 p.m. in council chambers.
There we go. Thanks, Evan. Questions from members of council on that? Pretty straightforward ask. And again, this is first reading. Deputy Mayor?
Just on the concerns of the other residents, and they were concerned about who would be living in the building itself. The applicant shared who they intend to rent it to, but was it made clear to them that the town doesn't really have control over who lives in the units? So I don't want them to have any expectations that.
Yeah, we try to clarify that the town won't be governing who lives in any property that is privately owned, and the applicant then further clarified the intention of the construction. And so, yeah, we certainly try to clarify that for all the members of the public in attendance.
Great, thank you.
Great. Good. Thank you for asking that question. Other questions from council? Just a note there from Amanda that it should, in the motion, it should say February 23rd, not 26th. Is someone prepared to make that motion? S'il vous plaît. Councillor Caldwell, thank you.
Move the town council for the town of Bridgewater hereby conduct first reading of bylaw 237, a bylaw to amend the land use bylaw map to enable the rezoning of the property located at 40 Victoria Road, PID 600222613, from downtown residential to medium density residential to enable a 4-unit dwelling as contained in Appendix A of document 26-018, and schedule a public hearing at the February 26, 2026, February 23rd, 2026, regular meeting of Bridgewater Town Council.
Thank you. Seconded by Councillor Wynot. Further discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor? Those opposed? Motion is carried. Thank you, Evan, very much. Down to our last item in our public meeting. Just a reminder, we do have an in-camera meeting after. Falls under sections 22(2)C, E, and F out of the MGA. But before that, we do have our Remo Intermunicipal Services Agreement amendments, which were great committee work to get this done. So, Mark, are you going to just walk us through these? Thank you.
Yes, I can walk you through. And Mr. Mayor, if you wanted to jump in on any of these, you can. We're going to focus on, there's 3 kind of main features in the new intermunicipal agreement. The first one is really about giving the agreement more teeth to compel people to come out when there's an activation, to get them out to training, and to earmark staff so there's an adequate number of staff from each municipal unit involved in Remo. So that's what you see highlighted in yellow in your copy. The second change in there is regarding a change of the way the calculation for cost is distributed, and there's a new introduction of a 20% base rate to the costing. So the net impact for the town of Bridgewater is slightly favorable. So we'll see a small reduction in our overall relative costing, and other municipal units such as Mahone Bay will be seeing a slight increase. But for us, it's a slight decrease. It's not a great deal, but it's still favorable. And as a slight aside, you're going to get the budget in a couple of weeks, and there's a grant, declining grant that's part of that budget. So you'll actually see our cost for fiscal year 26, 27 to be almost the same as it is this year, just a little bit less. And then the last part of the new intermunicipal agreement is really just kind of a recognition that, we have city or town municipal units, and we have rural ones. So we're saying that we have to have 3 municipal units with at least 40% of the total uniform assessment to get a carrying vote. So that is a little bit more even than it was in the past, because pretty much before it had to be without modal's agreement, you could really not get anything done. So this is a little bit fairer distribution of the voting. So if you hear the term 520, it's referring to the fine, and you might hear that thrown around if you're exposed to Remo. But this clause, I think, has already proven to have a positive impact to get people out for training. And for those of you that were in REMAC today, that's why we saw, I think, 40 people at the last couple of training sessions. So that's working. So those are the 3 changes. I don't know if Mr. Mayor, if you wanted to add in more on that.
No, or Councillor Newell. I know that I worked on this as well, so I don't have anything to add other than this is modernizing our agreement and with great input from our municipal partners. So it's a big step forward.
Yeah, I mean, we're pretty fortunate. You've been very kind to give your time as chair, and I had the pleasure of sitting on our subcommittee. But yeah, just as what the acting CAO said, this really aligns us based on some concerns brought up by I think some other municipalities. Helps I think better divide how the budget is allocated, and otherwise tries to keep municipalities account in the to account in the event that they're not able to provide the resources later in the agreement. So great step forward.
Yeah. Are there any questions from council? If not, someone prepared to make a motion?
I
Councilor
will
Newell,
be
thank
happy
you.
to. I move that Town Council for the Town of Bridgewater approve the proposed amendments to the Remo Intermunicipal Services Agreement as presented in document number 26-019.
Thank you. Seconded by Deputy Mayor McDonald. All those in favor? Those opposed? Motion is carried. Thank you. Yeah, just a reminder, you're going to exit this meeting. You have another link for the in-camera meeting. You can take a couple minutes if you need a break. I recognize that we've been at this almost 3 hours. And with that, can I have a motion to adjourn, please? Councilor Newell, seconded by Councilor Fagier. Need a gavel. We are adjourned. Thank you.